Good morning. I'm glad that the sun is shining and it's not the rainy, mixed, snowy, windy junk. I'm like, it's already spring. It's officially spring. It does not need to snow anymore. Done. My tulips are trying to come up. But they're like, no, it's too cold. Okay, so we do have a few announcements today. One, I want you ladies to take one of these, and I want you to write on here the 3 people you're planning on inviting for Easter. And it's a friend, a family member, or a coworker. Well, I don't work. Well, find another friend to write down, or another family member, okay? Write it down, pray about it, and pray that God would be a blessing and that He would answer your prayer and that we could have more families and friends and coworkers come out and hear the gospel and hopefully get saved, okay? And if you want, you can fill out more than one. That is fine. We are not going to come after you in your sleep, okay? So, anyway, I'm Kyla Jackson for those watching, for those in here, welcome again. Also, I have up here on the board, hopefully it'll stay, but this, you're like, what is that? Well, that is going to be our new curriculum. We're going to start in 4 weeks. And you're like, well, I don't have a book. Well, guess what? If you would like a student book, you can sign up. You can sign up right here. Uh-oh. I think, maybe. No, I got it. Okay. But you could sign up right here. If you want one of those books for our next series, go ahead and sign up. It's $8. And if you're sitting here thinking, I don't know if I can, we'll find a way to pay for your book, okay? If you don't have it, we'll find a way to get it to you, okay? But if you would like it, go ahead and sign up. I think it would be very beneficial for you. I know when I was studying it, it's a great book. And I've only gone through and studied the first lesson. But it's a very good book. I think you would find it very helpful if you sign up for the book. But there you go. Honey, do you have anything?
I do. One or two quick things. Ladies, thank you again for coming today. I want to let you know this thing behind my wife here is the Seder meal that Pastor will be doing tonight for our church service tonight. So if you've never got to see an Easter Passover Seder meal done, I encourage you to come. Pastor actually found, how many have ever had traditional Jewish matzah ball soup? How many have ever had it before? How many? Listen, this is part of the Passover Seder meal, and Pastor found it and found a Jewish company that makes it. So we're going to have some of that tonight. We're going to have all the different things. So not only is he going to do the Seder presentation tonight, he's also going to have a meal for us to try. So you'll actually get to try it, be a part of the Seder, which is very interesting. Some said, well, what does the Seder have to do with Christianity? Well, the Seder was part of the Passover. It's the word we would use for Passover. And the Passover was a picture of Christ. So I'm going to encourage you, come tonight at 5 p.m. It is one of the more, in my mind, moving services you'll be a part of, to come at 5 p.m. tonight and watch us and be able to see why each part of it was done and how each part represents Christ and the life of Christ. And so come out tonight. If you have a friend who really likes food, bring them out tonight. If you have a friend who really just enjoys the education side and learning some of these things, Pastor, you see he has the robes there. He has all the different parts. They're going to do each part of it. It is really very interesting. I told Pastor one of my favorite parts that I never knew. How many have ever read Ephesians 5 where it talks, be not drunk with wine, where it says, but be filled with the Spirit? That passage comes from part of the Seder. And it talks about part of the Seder, the cup of Elijah, where they take a cup and a bowl, and they take the cup and the bowl, and they fill it up. And it was, the idea behind it was that every time your cup gets full, it's supposed to keep falling over into the bowl, which is everyone who's around you. And it's this beautiful picture, and it all comes from this, which is a word picture I never knew, because I always thought, the cup spills everywhere. That's a mess. What's the point of that? And then the idea behind it was this beautiful picture of the cup is you, the bowl is your family, your friends, your neighborhood, all around you. And it's a great little picture. So I encourage you, come out tonight and join us. I also encourage you to buy this book. Someone once told me when I first got into college, and I remember sitting there and they did these classes, and they're like, and you need to buy this book. I'm like, man, I'm poor. $8, come on, $10. And then someone gave me the great example. When you're trying to hang a picture on a wall, a shoe will hammer the nail into the wall. How many have ever done this before? You can't reach the hammer, so you do it. A hammer works way better. And so we're coming in this, so we would love to get you some of these books. They will be an encouragement for you. Please sign up so we can know how to get it. I'm the guy who has to order them, so the sooner you sign up, we need to know by next week so we can get the order in. They come, right now we're doing it at $8 if they come in books of 5. But after next Sunday, if you sign up, it's going to cost you about $12 a book. So if you would like to save the money now, register now, sign up so you can go forward from there. Thank you for letting me take some of your class. God bless you guys. Have fun. Yes, ma'am?
When do you need the money for?
We do not need the money until about 2 or 3 weeks from now. We just need to know, as someone said, well, what if I can't come up with it? We'll find a way to get it for you. We don't want it to be cost prohibitive. If you really don't have $8, I've always found that someone will cover it. But we just say that most people, example, my wife and I, we did this when we had the last class. We just said, well, we're just going to not get her coffee twice. And then we were set.
I was just going to say that. You ruined my...
I know. That's what happened. So it's those things. But then most of us can, some of us can't. So if you can't, don't worry about it. Just come tell us. We will get you a book. We would like to encourage you.
That's, I mean, or you cannot eat fast food for a while. Well, 'tis true. 'Tis true. That is true. See, I don't do fast food very often, so. Anyway, so get the book. It'll help, I promise. Here's some more announcements. March 28th, which is Tuesday. This Tuesday, we have our Senior Friends Luncheon at 11 o'clock at the A&W in Grand Ledge. So come, be a part of it. You'll enjoy it. Coney dogs. If you like Coney dogs, go get a Coney dog. There. Root beer floats. The frosted float. I can't even think of if that's even the right word for it. But anyway, it's really good. Come on out, be a part of that. April 2nd. Oh, wait, that's next Sunday. April already. Palm Sunday. We're going to have the handball choir. They're playing. So if you enjoyed that at Christmas time, you will enjoy it for Palm Sunday. We have the kids choir singing. My kids are singing. There's special singing, the choir singing. There's a lot of music the next 2 Sundays. If you like music or you have friends that like music, bring them out. Have them come out. Well, I can't come for Palm Sunday. Well, can you come for Easter Sunday? Yeah. Well, I can't come for Easter Sunday. Can you come for Palm Sunday? Yeah. Okay, great. It's okay if they can't. Or Good Friday, thank you. I was getting to that. Man, you and Pastor Joe are stealing my thunder, I tell you. Y'all want to come up and give announcements, fine. No. Palm Sunday. Then the 4th, which is a Tuesday, is our mobile food pantry. I'm waiting belaboring these things because just in case somebody wants to say something else. Okay, 2 p.m. I know there's going to be at least 3 of us, maybe 4 of us who are normally there to help pass out food in the mobile food bank. Will not be there. So Pastor and Pastor Joe would love the help if you could come out and be a part of that. And it is a blessing and an encouragement to see all of these people lined up. I'm sure Belinda's heard stories from Jeff when Jeff would come home after helping us. I mean, cars backed up all the way to the road and sometimes around the corner, getting, waiting on the side of the road to pull into our church parking lot to get food. And not just for one family a lot of the time. A lot of the time there's cars for 6 families. Now just think, you see these little cars, okay, those little teeny tiny Fiats or the Mini Coopers or something. Trying to fit enough food in that car for 6 people is tricky. So you have to consolidate a whole bunch of stuff, but it's a blessing to see that. So come be a part of that.
If someone wants to pick me up, I'll come and help.
Okay. We'll try and get a ride situation figured for you. She's not going to be here. She's going to be one of the ones not here. But we could probably find you a ride. April 7th, that Friday, is our Good Friday service. Now, anything to do with Easter and
What time is the service?
6 p.m. 6 p.m. Yep. So anything that has to do with Easter, any Easter service, it's a blessing. It just gets you thinking of what Jesus did on the cross for us, so we wouldn't have to go through all of that. And he died on the cross to save us from an eternal hell, eternal torment. So just think about that this Easter. And then the following Sunday is April 9th, which is Easter. And all the kids are like, yay, when's the Easter egg hunt? When are we getting our Easter baskets? All that chocolate that's going to rot your teeth out. Well, it's not all about that. Although it's fun. We took a 2-day vacation to Muskegon Thursday and Friday. And we went to the mall in Grand Rapids, the Woodland Mall in Grand Rapids, and the kids were excited because guess who they got to see? The Easter Bunny. So they got to sit and shake hands, and they got a coloring book from the Easter Bunny, so they were thrilled. So you kids got to see the lighthouses, you guys got to see the Easter Bunny, you guys got to do this, and this. They got to see a clipper ship. We got to tour the clipper ship. We got to tour a submarine. So the kids were like, they were so excited. I was like, oh my word. I don't know how these guys, so they have this bunk room, and it's like, 10 people? I mean, if you want to know, ask Jeff, because Jeff worked on submarines, but I think 10 to 12 people in those, bunk rooms.
And they're right on top.
Yeah, I mean, that much space. I'm not kidding. I'm like, how can these guys, and they could only be so tall, right? They had like a height.
Family day one time when he was in
Oh, my
Florida,
word.
and I was like, oh, I can't remember, 5 or 6 months pregnant, and to go down the hatch and walk
yes.
the submarine with my belly.
I was not, okay, that was not me, but I get what you're saying because I had a short, straight skirt on, trying to climb over those doorways, and then trying to duck at the same time. Joe said I almost hit my head 4 times. I'm like, I'm ducking, but apparently not far enough. So she knows. It was awesome though. So I text my dad because I know he told me, but Dad, don't listen. But I texted my dad. I said, hey, the kids want to know if you've been on a submarine. I couldn't remember if he was or not. And so he goes, no, I was never on a submarine. But he was on a destroyer, he was on an aircraft carrier, and he was on a fast frigate in his service there. So I was like, he did the clerical stuff. So he did all the office work and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, I knew that. I did not remember. But anyway, so Easter Sunday, please invite someone to come out, family, friends, coworkers. That's what those little sheets are for. But Easter Sunday morning, we have a breakfast at 9 a.m. with a pastor's going to give a challenge. Or Pastor Joe, I can't remember who's doing it because they take turns. So one of the pastors are doing a challenge for the 9 a.m. service. And then 10 a.m. is our normal Sunday school time. And then we have an 11 a.m. service. And then we'll be dismissed for the day. So please come out and be a part of it. I know all of you have enjoyed the Easter services in the past, so bring some friends and family out, and it'll help not only you be encouraged, but it'll help Pastor and Pastor Joe and anybody else in the church. Yes, Murray?
Will they be running the bus on Easter Sunday or no?
No. So those are the announcements. Now, instead of me keep going on rabbit trails, I will maybe. Nope. Hold on. Hey, Judy, can I get one of those note sheets, please? Because I have pastor's notes up on the screen, so I'm looking for mine, but thought I had did mine on there. Yes, ma'am. For the book?
Can you just write my name on it?
Okay, so we are looking at Christ, our spotless Lamb. Christ, our spotless Lamb. The next 3 Sundays, today, Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, we're doing a short little Easter series. You're like, well, what? You probably think that, well, why aren't we doing the Christ ministry? Wait, this is part of Christ ministry, but just not in the book that we've been doing, okay? So sorry to confuse you ladies, but this is what we're going to be studying the next few Sundays. Well, just kind of an overview of, creation that leads up into, the resurrection. So we can all think of the song at Calvary, okay? Just think of the song. Dee, do you have a hymn book there underneath there that you can look up at Calvary in the index for me? But at Calvary, it says, years I spent in vanity and pride, caring not my Lord was crucified, knowing not that for me he died at Calvary. We already know that song. We already know the story. Thank you, Dee. Okay? It says in the chorus, mercy there was great and grace was free. Pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burdened soul found liberty at Calvary. Where do we find our liberty? Our freedom from the busyness of life. What was that? We should. That's where we should look for it, right? Because that's a good place to start. But sometimes people, me included, sometimes finds it in other things outside of the Bible. We can find it we could find it in shopping. Oh, I had such a busy day. I need to go and have a shopping spree or whatever. But that happiness, that freedom only lasts for an hour, 2 hours, depending on the person. It could be 5 hours. But for some people, they can find it in a book. Now, maybe for a little bit until your eyes start going crazy or you start falling asleep while you're reading. But where we should find our freedom, our liberty from the busyness of life is in God's Word, is in prayer, is in being at church, being around other Christians, but being around other believers. In verse 2 it says, by God's Word at last my sin I learned, then I trembled at the law I'd spurned, till my guilty soul imploring turned to Calvary. We're going through trials and troubles and stuff that's bringing us down spiritually. We need to turn to the cross. We need to turn and ask God to help us be a better Christian, to grow closer to Him. So, what are we doing? Well, as we know, the verses or the books of the Bible is Genesis 2 and 3. If you want, you could go home and read those today. There's a lot of verses there, so I'm not going to read all the verses to both chapters. So I'm going to encourage you ladies to go ahead and go home and study those 2 chapters. But we all know what chapter 1 of Genesis deals with, which is what? Genesis 1 deals with the creation. And we all know we enjoy what we see today. Maybe not the nastiness part or the crimes, but just think of the beautiful flowers and the trees and the other people that we can witness to. God made those. But the most important work of all that God created was what? What was the most important thing that God created? We could say, well, the trees. Well, yeah. The flowers. Yeah, we could say that. The animals. Yeah. Adam and Eve. Because you know why? God made us out of his image. What? Yeah, he did. In John 3:17, it says, "For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." Now, God, you're like, well, God destroyed the whole earth with a flood. Yes. But after the flood happened, what did he put up in the sky as a promise that he would never flood the whole entire earth again? What was that? Oh, you mean that beautiful thing that comes up in the sky every once in a while after a rain? Yes. But do we look at it as a blessing? Yep, because you know what? Lansing has never been completely destroyed by water. I mean, there's places where there was a lot of standing water after a huge rain or tons of snow. But God keeps his promise. I can't say the same for us, at least me. I mean, I can't keep my promises, but I work on it every day, especially with a 9-year-old who constantly reminds me sometimes. And my little 5-year-old who follows suit with that. But we have to, ladies, just think of these things that God puts in the world as a sign. All of this stuff later on in the Bible correlates to the beginning. So, number one, God created man and woman. Man became a living soul. Man would have a soul that would live forever, either with God or apart from God. God called him who? Adam. Adam. Then God made the first woman, and her name was Eve. Don't need to mess that up. And he placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Together, they had a lovely garden. How many of you have ever been to the Home and Garden Show? It's beautiful. A lot of the vendors and stuff, it's just amazing. One time we went, I think it was after Mom passed, we went and they had a Winnie the Pooh themed garden. It was all made of flowers. I'm like, that is unbelievable. It was really cool. I was like, my kids were like, oh, that is so cool. But a beautiful garden. I think of the prettiest gardens, like Frederick Meyer Gardens in Grand Rapids. That's where I was proposed at. Just if you want to hear more of the story later, I'll tell you later. But it was beautiful. It was so hot, but it was beautiful. So think of the prettiest garden you've ever seen. The Garden of Eden, I'm sure, was 100 times prettier. Because wait, were there weeds? No. You know why? Because Adam and Eve had not sinned yet. So I would have loved that garden. I wouldn't have had to really keep up with it because all the flowers would have had the nutrients it needed and it wouldn't have had weeds to kill them. So I would have been successful back then. But they got to live in the gardens. They got to take care of all the animals. Now, I don't know if I would want the job of naming all the animals. I had enough time trying to figure out what we were going to name our children. So let alone hundreds of different kinds of animals. But they did. They especially enjoyed each afternoon when God walked with them in the garden. In Genesis 2:7, who would like to read that up on the screen? Who would like to read that? Harmony?
The Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul.
Amazing. So God took that nasty stuff that we don't like eating, okay? Although some kids probably like eating dirt. We don't like it getting in our house or in our vehicles or clumped onto our kids' shoes after it gets nasty and mucky from the snow melting and rain. Anyway, So God used that dust of the ground, Belinda. I wonder, did he use his finger to etch it out, or did he know exactly what he wanted him to look like? He probably knew exactly what he wanted him to look like, but maybe he drew it in the sand to get the height he wanted. I don't know. That's a good question to ask God when we get there to heaven. But then he breathed into his nose the breath of life, and he became a living being. So it's like I could see like a cartoon, animated cartoon, King James version, because you don't get those nowadays, but how God etched in the sand, and as soon as he breathed into his nose, oh, hello, But he did that. That's a miracle, right? Well, then we know the story that God, he wanted to help me. He saw that all the animals had a partner. Goes, where's mine? So God put him into a deep sleep, took one of his ribs, created a woman out of a rib, a bone. And then we became a living soul. What a miracle. Just out of a little thing. We get so frustrated when we go to the beach and we have kids, right, Harmony? And we go, or they have a sand pit, and I'm like, no sand. Which we got rid of ours. And then they come in the house and you see sand everywhere. I'm like, all right, let's get the vacuum out. Shh. We had it in our patio. And so they decided to go. Yep. So guess what I had to do? Get a big shop vac and go get it all up. And it looks like I still can't get it all up. But God used that annoying stuff to make a human being. Well, God told them they could eat of every tree in the garden, right? Except one. But do you think they listened? No, they did not. Eve was the first one to disobey. So she listened to Satan. Oh, should we listen to Satan? No, we shouldn't, but we do at times. Right? And so Satan was like, I could get them to disobey. I can tempt the woman, not the man. I can tempt the woman. Hey, Dee. Let's say Dee's trying to be careful what she eats, okay? She probably is anyway, but let's say she's doing really good on eating the right things and doing her diet, unlike me, but doing her diet, okay? Hey, Dee, it's okay if you take that piece of chocolate cake.
I know you were going to say that.
Or Laura, it's okay if you take that cheesecake from the Grand Traverse Pie or from the Cheesecake Factory. I had to think of that. It's okay. You can work it off. Not the 1,200 calories that are in there. Just one huge slice. I had one the other day. And then I had to finish Gloria Ann's because she didn't want to eat it. Jill's like, well, give it to Mom. I'm like, luckily I'm starting the diet back up today, hard and strong, because I have a physical in May and I need a spray. But anyway, so I have like this peanut butter chocolate swirl cheesecake. It's like the richest cheesecake, one of the richest ones. Then Eli got a huge Oreo cheesecake. Gloria Ann got this celebration cheesecake. Cake, like birthday cake. So I was like, Oh, it was so sweet. And I didn't even have coffee to drink with it last night. And I am not a milk drinker. So I was just like, I was miserable. But then Stephen got a vanilla bean one. I was like, yeah, that's okay. And then Joel got just an original low carb. I'm like, okay, he's way better than I am. Then we got one for Pastor too. But those pieces of cheesecake were huge. And I didn't say, oh no, I don't, no. I just like, yup, stuffed it in my mouth. And I was just like, here's Eli's.
What kind did he get?
He got the Oreo one. So there's like a huge Oreo cookie on top of it.
Wow.
So he was like, his eyes were just about as big as his stomach. So he was like, he was thrilled. And then I'll show you the other couple later. But I had to show you his because he was determined to get a chocolate one. Well, he wanted one that had like vanilla mascarpone stuff in it and all that. It's like, you're not going to like that. He goes, but it's chocolate. I was like, give that one or a peanut butter one that has chocolate. I'll get the Oreo one, I guess. And he ate about half of it and then didn't want it anymore. So he ate he goes, this is so good. I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. But, you know. Anyway, so Satan, as we know, is very powerful. And he entered into the body of a serpent or a snake with legs, like a lizard, you know, I would think. And the serpent came to Eve and said, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And Eve said, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden. God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. So she was doing the right thing, telling Satan, no, I can't. Ye shall not surely die, the serpent said. For God doth not know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Well, the last part he got correct. Because when God first made Adam and Eve, nothing was wrong, so they didn't have to have clothes. So they walked around just free as a bird. You know? And we sit there and think, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. Yeah. Nowadays, if that happens, we're like, oh, exactly. So there's no reason for them to be like, oh, because it was just them. They were the only human beings in the garden. The animals could care less, whatever, you know. So the serpent tempts Eve. Yea, hath God said. Well, we all know that. But Eve, she started off doing great. No, God said we can't eat of that tree in the midst of the garden because we will surely die. And Satan turned those words right around because he does that. Because he's the father of what? Lies. How many of you have had something very similar to that happen to you? Don't be shy, ladies. It's us in here, okay? It's okay. All right? Sometimes it happens more often than you would like to admit. Okay? Well, what do you think Eve did? Did she turn away and say, no, I can't, and walk away? Or did she say, okay. She started having that, oh, yeah, I believe. She believed Satan, and she ate of the forbidden fruit. Now, we could all say that like the worst fruit in the world was on that tree. The only fruit so far that I do not like is muskmelon. Yeah, my family likes it. My mom likes it. Mom, what's wrong with you? For a while there, I hated bananas, but I like bananas. I just don't eat them very often. But she ate of this fruit. And then Adam's like, what did you do? In verse 3 of Genesis, or verse 1 of Genesis 3, it says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden." So Satan wiggled his little wormy self into her thought process, saying, hey, it's okay. But was it okay, ladies, for her to eat of that fruit? Because God said no. But she did anyway. Because she thought, what does God know? Well, that's a wrong thought process right there. Not only did Eve eat, when Adam came, he also took of the forbidden fruit. Okay, you could have, it's like Adam, you could have said, why? And then pulled her away. But you know what? God did this for a reason. The Bible doesn't tell us what kind of fruit they ate. It was probably not any fruit that they have on earth today. It was a special fruit from this special tree. In verse 6 of chapter 3, would anybody like to read that for me? Right there up on the screen. Murray?
And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired, to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat.
So, why wouldn't Adam stand up for what's right? She started to, but then Satan, with his cunning words, said, oh, it's okay. It's okay, Donna. Nobody will find out. God already knows. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, well, it might have been good, but sometimes good can come with a bad consequence. Because we may think that thing is good at the time, like that yummy chocolate peanut butter swirled cheesecake. But then we're like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten it. And then you're like feeling sick almost because it was so rich and so sweet. I'm like, never do that again. You know, I can make keto cheesecake that tastes just as good, but not as rich. But sometimes those good things that we think are good at the moment will end in disaster. Well, now Adam and Eve had both disobeyed God and had done something wrong for the first time. They had sinned. The serpent lied to them and said, no, your eyes will be open. You will be like other gods. But see, he was right on the end part. You will know good and evil. But the part about being like other gods, nope. It's a lie. So they felt guilty. Before this, Adam and Eve, like I said, did not wear clothes. For they were clothed in God's righteousness. But now, since they disobeyed, they ended up make sure I have the right paper here. They ended up needing to sew fig leaves together to cover them up. Because now they no longer had God's righteousness clothing them. Because there was nothing wrong before they sinned. But now that they sinned, everything is going to go wrong for them. Well, Adam and Eve hid from God. Who would like to read Genesis 3:8? Anybody? Judy?
And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden.
So don't you think that if you've ever done something that went against God or against your parents when you're growing up, or you've seen it with your young kids or your grandkids or whatever, they knew they did wrong and they try and hide from you, or they try and not look you in the eye because they know that if they say something, they'll be lying. But you know, just yesterday, one of my children was doing something, and they quickly ran to get up on their bed. Like, what are you doing? Nothing. I was like, don't lie. I know. I said, you can't look at me without smiling, so you're not telling me the truth. So I said, don't lie. Tell me the truth. Okay, Mom. I was like, so we all are embarrassed when we know we've done wrong, especially when we've done wrong around people that love us. Because we know that those people will tell us what we don't want to hear, but we need to hear it. And then the unsaved are like, oh, who cares? Whatever. But they don't know that we know what we need to do and we don't do it. So they hid themselves. That afternoon, when the time came for God to walk with Adam and Eve in the garden, as he usually did, he did not find them waiting for him. They were hiding. They didn't want to be seen because they knew they've done wrong, and they knew that God was going to punish them. Of course, God already knew what they had done, because God knows everything. So he called, "Where art thou?" Adam, Eve, it sounds like a Shakespearean play. "Where art thou?" They didn't want to answer, because they knew they were in trouble. Well, he called again. Soon Adam and Eve realized that they could not hide from God, so they came out of their hiding places. Adam and Eve found fig leaves, sewed them together somehow, and made clothes for themselves. When they stepped out, they felt really guilty for what they did. And God spoke, "Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shalt not eat?" Well, God already knew, but he wanted to hear it from them to see if they would actually tell the truth. Well, Adam and Eve had sinned, so God told them their punishment. To Eve, he said, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Oh, you mean that painful thing called birthing children? Yeah, thanks, Eve. But every sin has a consequence. And of course, God still loved Adam and Eve just as much. Well, to Adam, God said, "Cursed is the ground for thy sake, in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee." Oh, here come the weeds in that beautiful garden. "And thou shalt eat the herb of the field, and the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground." So they will be farmers, they will be gardeners, and they will eat from their crops until the day they die. In Genesis 3:7, "And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons." Now, the lamb is slain. God took an animal in the garden, probably a lamb, and killed it. The blood was spilled over the ground, and had the lamb done anything wrong? No. Of course not. Adam and Eve were the ones who had done wrong. So God killed the animal, shed its blood, took the skin, and made clothes for Adam and Eve. This animal gave its life to make a covering for the shame of Adam and Eve's disobedience. Oh, wait, doesn't that sound familiar? God took a little pure lamb, killed it, let its blood flow, but then he made clothes for Adam and Eve out of the sheepskin. But Jesus did the same thing. in Genesis 3:21, it says, "Unto Adam also and his wife did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothe them." And then God had to send them out of the garden, because now they are no longer full of God's righteousness. They have sinned against God. And so part of their punishment was having to leave their beautiful garden. And God put an angel at the entrance with the sword that faced each direction, a flaming sword, to keep them out of the garden, because they had done wrong. In Genesis 3:15 it says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise thy heel." Ladies, as we can see here, there's a punishment for our sin. There's a punishment for our wrongdoing. Okay? We are born with hearts that want to disobey God, but God still loves us even though we are so bad. He wants us to go to heaven when we die and live with him forever. He wants so much for us to live with him in heaven that he made a way for us to be able to go even though we are sinners. The lamb points to the cross. Now there's verse references after each point. So take your time, look at these at home, and go over these. The lamb points to the cross. The lamb that died to cover the shame of Adam and Eve points down through the years to the cross of Calvary, where Jesus did the same thing for us. Like I said, the story about Jesus being crucified comes all the way back to Genesis. Now, lately I have been seeing a lot of this type of stuff, and I've read the Bible through multiple times, but there are still times, Donna, where I learn things that I never really understood before. And I think part of it is because I'm where I need to be spiritually. Now, of course, all of us still need to grow more. But when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we'll learn a whole lot more in our Bible reading and in service times. But we have to make sure our hearts are right. Well, in John 1:29, it says, "The next day John seeth Jesus coming unto him, and saith, Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." That was from our first lesson in our Christ's ministry series, where John the Baptist was baptizing people and preaching the gospel, and Jesus came down and wanted to be baptized by his cousin, John the Baptist. And John saw him afar off, and he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sins of the world." We need to believe on him, and we need to thank him for taking our place on the cross so that we can live with him in heaven one day. And we need to pray that God would give us the opportunity and the wisdom and the strength that we need to be able to witness to our coworkers or our family members or friends. Angels visit the shepherds. We're like, well, now, Kyler, you're getting into the Christmas. Yes, but this is all connected. Thank you. Laura's helping me with words today. It's all connected. The angels visit the shepherds. Many, many years went by. One beautiful starry night, there were some shepherds who were on a hillside outside the city of Bethlehem, watching over their sheep. Suddenly they saw the sky filled with the angels, and the angel spoke to them, saying, what? Fear not, right? For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. He had to come be a baby first. Then he grew up, and when he was 33, he was crucified. In Luke 2:11, and I just read the verse, for unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. Well, Christ, the baby, was born in a stinky stable. But I don't think Mary and Joseph were sitting there complaining, because they had a place to lay. They had a safe place for the baby to be born. and they had each other. But they laid him in a nasty, dirty feeding trough that cows and pigs and horses slobber in. Gross. Okay? So they laid him in a manger. Luke 2:16, and they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in the manger. See, the angels told the shepherds the news. So the shepherds left their sheep, went running to the stable to see Mary, Joseph, and the baby. The shepherds came in and worshiped this special baby. It was right to worship this child because he is God, the Son of who left heaven and came to live on earth. He wants the promised Messiah. They had, He was the promised Messiah that all of those people had been waiting for and looking for. They did not worship Mary and Joseph, for they were just righteous people. But this child was holy, for God was his father. They worshiped the child, for he was the promised Messiah. Did you hear that? They didn't come to worship Mary and Joseph. They congratulated them. But then they came and bowed down and worshiped a baby. But yes, this baby was not like Quinn. He was not like Sam, although they're growing up too fast. But just think of Alicia Sims' unborn child, who will be born in not too long. But just think of those precious little babies that are just so innocent, that they bowed down and worshiped to that little baby. We all love babies. As my kid said, Mommy, I want to, nope. We've had that discussion. We had all told them, nope, unless God tells us otherwise, we are not, no. So it's all set, no. Okay? But they worshiped him. Now, we're going to Jesus at the seaside and the healing of the blind. In Mark 10:49, it says, and Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. And they called the blind man, saying unto him, Be of good comfort, rise, he calleth thee. So Jesus was calling the blind man. Why? To lecture him or to heal him? To heal. He kept growing until his body was 30 years old of age. This is Jesus. But do you know how old he really was? He was forever. He might have been on earth for 33 years, but he's going to live forever. He was eternity years old. It's kind of a fun little thing to say. He was an eternity years old. When his body was about 30 years of age, he began to teach and to go preach as man had never heard before, nor has ever heard since then. He performed many miracles, and we know one day he fed 5,000 with just a little boy's lunch. 2 small loaves. 5 loaves and 2 small fishes. He opened blind eyes, healed deaf ears, and strengthened crippled legs or limbs. So God is a miracle worker. God can heal us with whatever sickness we may have, physically, spiritually, maybe financially, emotionally. God can heal us. Then God calmed the sea, and he raised the dead. One time he was on a great storm on the Sea of Galilee. His disciples heard him talking to the storm. He said, Peace, be still. And the storm obeyed and immediately stopped. Boy, I would like to just say that. Snow, stop. Be 75 and we're good. Okay? And the storm obeyed and stopped right away. Another time he walked on top of the water. Some who were dead, he called back to life. Oh, wait, you mean like Lazarus? His friend? You know, he could have said, Rise, come forth, but you know how many other dead people probably would have come forth when he said that. But he said, Lazarus, come forth. Then everybody was like, oh, he's going to stink. Well, he might have, but you know what? His friend's back to life. So he raised the dead. When he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. John 11:43. God can raise people from the dead. Maybe close to death. No, Brent Newman, he was, I don't know how many times he had been resuscitated in his life, and he's still living and breathing today. A miracle, I would say, because God's not finished with him yet. There's been a close call with Miss Pearl. 7 years ago? About as old as Eli. About 7 years ago, she was in a horrible accident. But you know what? God spared her life, Donna, because God still wants her to do something great. She's been a blessing to a lot of us in the church. Well, next we see Pilate's judgment hall. Oh, wait. Creation, Christmas, other miracles in between, and now we're getting closer to Easter. Wow, it's all connected. Okay? So, Pilate's judgment hall. In Luke 23:4, it says, Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. But you know what? They didn't want to hear it. All the people were saying, set Barabbas free. You mean the person who killed people? They wanted to set free? Instead of a man who has not done anything wrong. They would rather have a murderer on the streets, Dolores, than Jesus, who healed people and cast out demons. Okay, I would have picked Jesus, but they were so selfish. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. Well, the crowd wanted Barabbas. They wanted Jesus killed, and they cried over and over again, crucify him, crucify him, set Barabbas free. Well, Pilate, wanting to please the people, that is your mistake. Are we pleasing people or are we pleasing God? Before he orders Jesus to be taken away and crucified, Pilate publicly washed his hands with water and said, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. Was he really innocent? No. He was the ruler. He could have said, no, I'm not going to crucify an innocent man. But you know what? That's not what God's plan was. The crucifixion of Jesus. In Matthew 27:40, it says, Thou that destroys the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross. So they were teasing him. God could have sent 10,000 angels to take him off the cross anytime. But that's not what God's plan was for us or for Jesus. About 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 were hung on the crosses. One of the men asked to be with Jesus in heaven. I got to wrap this up. Long-winded. But there was a centurion at the cross who felt guilty after this because he cast lots. They gambled over Christ's robe. To make sure he was really dead, they pierced his side with a spear, but he was already dead. No one took his life from him. He willingly gave up his life. The body was removed from the cross, put in a tomb, and 3 days later came back to life again. And Jesus today lives in heaven, and he wants us to come to heaven and live with him when we die. In Matthew 27:54, then I'll let you ladies go. It says, Now when the centurion and they that were with him, watching Jesus, saw the earthquake and those that were done, and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly, this was the Son of God. Now it became dark as midnight. The 12th hour, it was dark. And then the earthquake, then he was no longer there. Or he gave up the ghost. So what are you ladies doing with your life? Are you being a witness to other people? Are you asking God to give you the wisdom and the strength and the encouragement you need to be able to stand up for what's right, to be able to witness to other people? Let's go ahead and let's have your eyes closed and your heads bowed. I'm going to ask a question here real quick.